To the special meeting of the Solvang City Council for July the 2nd, 2018. We call the roll, please.
Councilmember Jameson,
Here.
Toussaint,
Here.
Waite,
Here.
Councilmember Zimmerman is absent. Mayor Richardson.
Here, would you stand with me for the pledge, please? Place your hand over your heart and repeat with me. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Item number 1, Madam Clerk. You get to read that in.
Item 1, resolution regarding November 6, 2018 general municipal election ballot measure.
Staff report.
Mr. Mayor and members of the council, I think I got the short mic here. On June 25th, the council directed staff to include a measure, potential ballot measure on the November 6th ballot that would add a general business tax for cannabis business activities in the city. Due to the timeline constraints, our resolution must be docketed at the clerk of the board with the Santa Barbara County's Board of Supervisors by July 5th to get the ballot measure request before the Santa Barbara Board of Supervisors to be included in that. A special city council meeting was called for today to consider the placement. So staff was not given any direction as to what the tax would be, so we did actually model an ordinance after the city of Galitas, who is taxing at a start of 5% and going up to 10%. So what you have in your packet is an ordinance that's similar to theirs. They actually have cultivation and other businesses. Ours was just for retail, and it would deal with mainly medicinal retail. So you've got that before you. It's up for discussion of the council as to exactly what you'd like to put on there. But what we had done is we did do some draft language for you, and it would, on the ballot, it would read, shall an ordinance be adopted establishing a cannabis business tax on gross receipts of cannabis businesses from the sale of cannabis and cannabis products at a rate not to exceed 10% with an initial rate of 5% to fund general municipal services such as street repair, parks, and law enforcement until ended by voters. So that would be the base that we've thrown out for your consideration. As I said, there's quite a limited timeline. There are some other potential resolutions in the packet other than the actual ballot tax ballot measure. When you do a measure like this, you can give a impartial. You can have the city attorney do an impartial analysis of it, and that can be put onto the ballot. And then you also can accept ballot arguments for and against. And so you have demonstration resolutions in your packet if you would like to add those to the process that we send forward to the Board of Supervisors. So that it's kind of a quick summary. The timeline was very short, so staff tried to pull something together to meet that deadline, and we're here for any questions that you may have.
Is there any questions of the staff report?
I just question the timeline to have arguments for and against. It looks like we would be the only ones maybe writing them. It's a little short notice for people in the public.
The timeline established is statutory by and large, and I'm not sure exactly what the days are. Lisa may be able to provide some guidance on that, but it's based on the number of days before the election and when the county closes the printing of the ballot.
Okay, so it's not like tomorrow.
It's not tomorrow, but it's very short. I don't know the specific calendar of it.
Yeah,
Is it in there?
Yeah, Galita had them in their staff report, so I did copy that. Under each of those, there is a time for those listed in your staff report.
Okay.
Yeah.
What page?
It depends on which section. So the impartial analysis, the first day would be July 23rd, and you have until August 1st to submit that. Resolution of filing written arguments were from July 23rd to August 1st, and then examination for all arguments was August 2nd to August 13th. And then if you were to do rebuttals, that period was from August 3rd to August 13th for submittal.
I'd like to break those 3 resolutions up into separate items instead of lumping them as all one thing. Number one, do we want to have that resolution before the public for cannabis taxation? And number two, if we do, then let's continue on with the other. Okay? Any other questions of staff? Seeing none, we'll go to the public comment. I have no speaker slips. Okay?
Hi, Gay Infanti, Solvang resident. Actually, just a question. I noticed that the tax would be a general tax, so that means it goes to the general fund for a number of different purposes, depending on how the city wants to spend it. Is that correct? Seems like the county was going to revisit that. I know that's how they established their tax in the last election, but there's a big concern that the additional law enforcement costs and staff time and so forth of the city, things related to collecting taxes perhaps and so on, they were concerned that not enough would be set aside for that stuff. So I didn't know if you all had considered possibly being more specific about what that tax would be spent for, but I thought I'd bring it up. Thank you.
Is there anyone else wish to speak? Tracy?
Just to clarify on that, a general tax requires a 50% plus one. A specific where you list where it's going to be used, that would be 2/3 majority.
Tracy?
Hi, Tracy Beard from the Solvang Chamber of Commerce. At this time, we feel until the city gets the marijuana, I want to say cannabis marijuana legalized, we are against right now having businesses come in that until you guys really determine where it's going to be. We do not accept chamber membership based on that, and we wanted you to know that. We want to abide by the city guidelines that we have in place right now. And that's our position on it at this time right now until things change, because we have had people want to offer us money to be chamber members and sponsorship, and we don't take it.
Thank you.
May I just ask her a question? I know we're not supposed to. Tracy? Yes. Okay. Should the city approve the distribution for medical purposes only,
We realize that.
then what would you do?
We would have to talk to our board of directors at that time, but we haven't had a discussion. We had a discussion in January, February, and it's in our minutes that at this time, we chose not to accept funding, accept anything until the city took a different position. You guys are starting to take a position on medical marijuana.
Okay.
And, I think, I have to look at my businesses. I can do a polling, a survey for you of the businesses to see how they feel about it if you would like.
Okay, well, there is discussion tonight, I believe, at
At the
the
Planning Commission.
Planning Commission about it.
Is there anyone else who wishes to make a comment at this time? No other speaker slips. With that, we'll close public comment, bring it back to the dais for action. Who'd like to start? Joni?
No.
Ryan?
Hey, I have a couple questions. It says that there's evidence supporting that this would generate 60,000 in taxes for Solvang.
Yeah, we took that out of the presentation you received last meeting. They estimated if they were to open
Got
at
it.
5%, that was the number.
So that's based on 5%,
5%, yeah. That's based
1.2
on a
million
5%.
gross sales would
Yeah.
then be, okay.
And that's just for one operation?
Right.
Okay.
And then the other was, so I guess because you kind of mentioned like retail sales and things like that, would a better descriptor just be medicinal sales?
I think the difficulty with saying medicinal sales versus retail versus wholesale is there are specific provisions in the adult use language under Prop 64 that categorizes various types of businesses. And we're looking at trying to be as broadly encompassing as opposed to narrowing it,
Okay.
so that in the event something changes at the city council level or state level, we already have the tax in place. The only businesses that would be considered by the council for placement at this time are medicinal. But if at some time later on in state law they say
Right.
we're preempted, then the tax would already be in place and would be covering that.
It's just because in my head I see medicinal the taxes, we're only talking about that, but retail I would see is like some of these other dispensaries that allow recreational, and
Right.
anyone can walk in with a driver's license and
Right.
make a purchase.
We still have the local power to prohibit those types of businesses, but in order to go for a tax, you have to do them at very specific elections, and limiting it to medicinal. And if the state all of a sudden said, okay, we're going to open the field to recreational and cities
Then we
can't
wouldn't have a
regulate them
tax
anymore,
measure,
there wouldn't be a
right.
tax in place.
So this way we'll be covered regardless, even if the
Correct.
state came down tomorrow and said, guess what, you're putting in retail, or, I mean, recreational, then we're
Correct.
covered. Okay.
I'm just wondering if we want to put a minimum rate of 5%, because when I was looking at the packet, I saw, anywhere from 4 to 10%. So, I don't know if we want to do a starting rate as low as 5.
I was going to comment on that. The documentation we received about the taxes all over the state showed from a low of like the 5% to as high as 15 or 25%. My suggestion, and the suggestion here is from 5 minimum to 10 max. I think we should run it from 5 minimum to a 15% max with no more than a 2% increase in any year. That would cover the possibility of recreational marijuana creating a problem in the city. Will have the funds necessary to handle any unseen things that are going to happen. I don't know that 10% would do that, and if we wrote it so it increases at no more than 2% a year, it would be fair for the retailer to be able to gear up for any increases in the taxes.
I haven't seen that anywhere else.
Well, because you're setting a general tax, you can set the parameters that you want to send it to the voter. So you can set it at a minimum 5%. You would look at a change to Section 353 in the proposed ordinance that say shall pay a cannabis business tax of not less than 5% of gross receipts. That way you set a floor. You would also need to change the language of the resolution on the ballot language to say at a rate not less than 5%, but a maximum of X percent, whatever it is that you decide on. You could also put in provisions in the ordinance itself that talk about the maximum increase in any given year. Currently, the rate is set by the city council by resolution or ordinance, subject to a maximum of 10%. You could change that language to say the rate set forth may be adjusted by the city council from time to time in an amount not more than 2% in excess of the prior year's amount. So there are ways that you can add that. This is your opportunity to do that. This is what will ultimately go before the voters and what will appear in the ballot pamphlet from the county. So we do need to hammer that down today, and we're in a position to go ahead and make those alterations because it is just a resolution at this point. The ordinance itself would be adopted by the voters at the election.
So I'm not in support in going for a higher floor. I think that should then, it would have to go back out to ballot again if the council at that time wanted to raise the tax above the 10%, if that's the highest we put it at for today, right?
That's correct. If
Okay.
you set 10% as your max, you would need to go back to the voters to raise it above 10%.
Okay, so I'm in support of the 10%, but I'm max, but I'm also in support of maybe having a lower floor, like what Karen was suggesting, and then also a maximum that it could increase in any one given year. Those are things that I'm open to. So
Okay, so that I'm clear, you're talking about a lower floor. The current proposed rate, the initial rate that would be proposed is 5%.
Right.
Are you talking about that as the hard floor, or are you talking about a possibility that the council could say in a future year, okay, 3%?
like
Okay.
if we replace 5 with 3, then the council has that leeway anywhere between 3 to 10%, for example.
Okay. It's up to you how you want to set the parameters on it. I'm just trying to make sure that it's extremely clear for future councils as to what their authority will be. So if
Right.
the initial rate is 5%, that would be what you would say in the ordinance and say, shall pay a cannabis business tax at the initial rate of 5% of gross receipts. Then we can add another subsection that says the rate as established from time to time by the council by ordinance or resolution shall not be greater than 2% more than the prior rate established by council. Something along those lines. Is that what you're looking to do?
Yes, I'm just agreeing with Karen on the lower floor.
Okay.
But I'm also not opposed to Jim's idea of having a set, escalation schedule in there, so it's not 5% one year, 10% the next year.
Okay.
Joni?
I personally do not think that 5% is an unreasonable amount at this point in time. We don't even know if the voters are going to approve this. I think this is going to be a statement from the citizens of Solvang to see if they really want to have cannabis within their community. And I think if they don't, then they're going to vote this tax down.
Well, didn't you all get the same documents I got regarding taxes throughout the state?
Oh, yeah.
And did you happen to notice that every tax was passed by better than 3/4
Yep.
of the percentages?
Yep. Did you also notice where they were?
They were all over the state. The only place
not
that it was
quite.
less was in San Francisco. So I don't see any fear of the tax passing. I think it'll pass, and so because of that, I think we ought to be able to set our range that we're going to be set with any eventuality that occurs. And I don't think that 10% is enough. I think if we have it 15%, then 10 years from now we may just have to have it at 15%. But we won't increase it any more than a couple of percent each year, or how often we ever do it. So. And that way we won't have to go back to the voter for an increase. There might be some real changes in the city at that, by that time. So just to cover ourselves.
I asked Brad to give numbers about the taxes on a pack of cigarettes.
Yeah, I believe it's $2.87.
And how much does a pack of cigarettes cost?
Depends where you buy it.
That I don't know. I don't
Where you buy
purchase
it in
them.
the casino is $10 a pack.
$10 a pack at
In
the
the casino,
casino? My,
and it's.
glad I don't smoke.
I stopped smoking when it's 35 cents a pack. So.
And they're $8 at when you're at VIP Tobacco in Solvang.
$8 a pack.
Yes.
That includes federal and state tax, some federal and state taxes plus then the sales tax.
So about how much of that do you think is taxed? 50% of the $8
Oh,
at
more.
least?
I don't know, but it's a giant amount.
Well, 287 is the one that goes to the state. That's a
Okay.
set. That was a ballot measure that actually
So if
established
it's
that.
$8, $3, okay.
That's a third right there, at least.
Well, I don't want this to be a confusing decision for the voters. So maybe we could simplify it, and maybe instead of doing the lower floor, what I was thinking, we could start at a initial rate of 5% and not put a higher limit on it, but put language in that says a not to exceed XYZ percentage increase per year, or at the discretion of the council.
You're going to need to have a maximum rate
Right.
because that's how you will determine the.
Well, I think
legality.
that's what Karen was just saying, but I think she's just saying, well, then we just keep it at the 5 to 10% with the initial starting at 5. Just
Okay, that's what
pass.
we have in the packet. So all we would be changing is adding a no greater than a 2% increase over the prior amount.
I'd like to move that the upper limit be 15%, with no more than 2% increase.
Because
Minimum 5,
we'd have to go back to the voters to increase it
to increase it past
past
15.
10%.
Past 15.
Right, but past 10%.
I'm still
initial-
thinking about this
Wait, let me
being,
finish speaking. My motion says that the minimum will be 5%, the maximum will be 15%. That's the range that that the council can adjust the tax between. If some future council wants to go more than 15%, it has to go back out to the public for a ballot to approve.
I think if people want to go, if a future council wants to go up to the 10%, then they can put it back out to ballot.
There's a motion on the floor.
So
Discussion?
I'll make a substitute motion that we pass the 5 to 10% schedule with a maximum of 1% increase
1% per year?
per year.
Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Will you call the roll, please?
Councilmember Toussaint,
Yes.
Jameson,
Yes.
Wait,
Yes.
Mayor Richardson.
No, that motion passes 3-1, one absent. Okay, on to the next that resolution 2. Yes. Would you take care of that one, Brad? Would you tell us about that one, please?
The next one would be to have direct the city clerk to have the city attorney prepare an impartial analysis for the ballot measure to be put on the ballot.
What's the council's position on that?
The question is, can he be impartial?
I'm very good at being impartial on these.
Okay, you say so. I would agree with that.
You want to agree with that?
I agree.
Okay. Then can we have a motion?
I so move.
I'll second.
It's been moved and seconded. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Absent? 4-0-1. On to the third resolution.
This one would set up priorities for filing written arguments regarding the city measure for the ballot. So arguments in favor of.
And that would mean that, do we want to do that?
You'd set up a process for that, yeah.
And there is a cost involved in doing that, no?
Yeah, the more stuff you put into the ballot language, the more we pay. And we don't have a number quite yet on that, but yeah, the more that's submitted to the county, the higher your bill.
So are we prepared to write an argument and an argument rebuttal for the bond measure?
How much time do we have to do that?
He just went over those dates.
Let me get back to that section. You would have, the filing period would be from July 23rd to August 1st.
A week?
Well, you'd have until July
Until-
23rd, yeah.
Discussion?
I guess the question is, who on the council would be writing these? I don't care to be involved.
Nor do I.
I can do it.
You want to write the proposal or the argument for?
For,
Yeah, I can do it.
okay.
Is there a rebuttal? You want to write a rebuttal? You want to write the rebuttal?
No,
too?
no, because I'm
Write
for
the rebuttal
this.
too, if you
So
like.
on the rebuttal part, you set parameters for people who may want to rebuttal. It doesn't have to be a council member.
Yeah.
And it doesn't, and other
It's a
people,
member of the public
Doesn't have to be a
typically.
council member that makes the original argument either.
and another person can also make an argument, is that not correct? It doesn't have to just be one person.
Well, you can set up 2 council members. You can set up the council as a whole if you want to approve one. You could have a council meeting where you approve the
Well, can a
initiative.
public person write,
There is a prioritization of the people. If the council doesn't submit one, then you have that. There's the provision in the resolution in your packet, I believe. Let's see.
So then,
But the council needs to write one pro and one.
Well,
as a
the
rebuttal.
council doesn't have
have to
to.
write anything?
It's not obligated to do that. You can just let it go. And if the council doesn't do it, then there's a statutory precedent of who then would be able to submit one. And
Okay.
the timing is in the staff report as to when those would come in. But let me see if I can get the language exactly in the staff report. If you take a look at page 4 or 5 of your staff report, it says there's a preference and priority. The individual voter or bona fide association of citizens, bona fide association of citizens, and individual voters. And that's if the council member or the city council doesn't submit one.
Can you repeat that one more time?
Sure. Page 4 or 5 of the staff report says that the city council or council, page 6 in the lower right-hand corner. I'm just looking at the staff report. Third full paragraph, or a second full paragraph there. If the city council or council members do not write an argument for the measure, and if more than one argument for the measure is submitted pursuant to the elections code, the city clerk selects the argument and gives preference and priority in that order.
I don't think that it's necessary for us to do this.
Write either for or against?
I don't think it is.
So, so then the first question is, do we want to, the third resolution, providing for filing a rebuttal of arguments for the city measure, does that mean that, does that resolution indicating that the council should make the rebuttal in the argument, or?
Let me pull up the language of it. No, it doesn't say in there that the city council is obligated to do it. And this comes from Martin and Chapman. This is it's an elections manual. We'd obviously format it for city purposes, but the section 1 of that resolution, which is on page 29 of your packet, says the author or a majority of the authors of an argument relating to a city measure may prepare and submit a rebuttal argument. That's the rebuttal arguments. But the section 9285, the elections official has selected the argument for and against the measure, which will be printed. The elections official shall send a copy of the argument to the authors and any against to the opponents. So that's the prioritization of where it is. But there's nothing in that resolution that requires the council to submit any type of argument.
So then we should allow the public to write an argument if we don't? So we should consider passing this resolution?
I'm also happy writing both.
Well, can I have a motion accepting the resolution?
But you can certainly authorize Councilmember Toussaint to author both of them. But that's up to you. And the resolution, I'm sorry, I was looking at the second resolution. The resolution that affects the authorization is on page 27 of your packet, and it says the city council authorizes the following members of its body to file a written argument.
Well, I just feel strongly that we shouldn't be writing this because we're the ones that are trying to pass this. So, and if it is
Well,
not,
it's also like, just us putting the facts down, versus.
the pros and the cons. But I mean, surely we can find some sort of already pre-written pros and cons on other ballots from other cities. What are the pros? What are the cons?
It looks like to me if we don't pass this resolution, then there won't be any arguments written on the ballot. Is that correct? Okay, so then the question is, do we want to allow arguments and rebuttals to be written about this tax on the ballot?
Or would you suggest having some
Just have it on the-
boilerplate language?
I believe we should allow this rebuttal to happen because the public may want to make an argument on it, and that they would be allowed to do that for or against the tax.
So far, we have Ryan that's going to write 4. Is that correct?
Yeah, I can write as many as, I'd
know,
be
but
looking
you're-
at
but you're-
templates,
You'd
kind
be
of
willing
what
to
Karen's
do that.
saying,
Okay.
and come up with what I think is appropriate, just trying to strip out, and just getting down to the facts.
The first question is, do we want the argument and the rebuttal in the ballot?
Well, I think on measures like this, there typically is a pro and a con, the benefits and the negative sides of it, and they're usually fairly to the point and factual. I personally do not feel qualified to write something like that.
And I'm pulling up the elections. I'm pulling up the election code, and forgive me, I don't get these except every 2 to 4 years, and so I have to go back to the code and look exactly what the language is regarding the submission of arguments. But 9281 of the election code says, if no other method is provided by general law, or in the case of a charter city like Solvang, arguments for and against any city measure may be submitted to the qualified voters of the city pursuant to this article. If a method is otherwise provided by general law or the charter for submitting the articles, that method shall control. So for measures placed on a ballot by petition, the persons filing the initiative petition may file a written argument. For measures placed on the ballot by the legislative body, that being the city council, the legislative body, or a member of the legislative body, or an individual voter who is eligible to vote, or a bona fide association of citizens, or a combination of citizens and associations may file a written argument. So they're going to be permitted to file a written argument if the city council doesn't set the priority. If you authorize a council member to go ahead and do that, that will be the first one, and that will be the one that appears on the ballot. If you do not designate a council member, then the next priority would be an individual voter who's eligible to vote on the measure may come in and do that. You can set the priorities according to that if the council's not going to submit one.
Okay, well, with that in mind, I think we may have better control over laying out the facts, the pros and cons, if we take this on ourselves.
I kind of feel like if we're creating this measure, we should be putting the cons and pros on it.
So can I have a motion?
Does anyone else want to write any of these, or?
Well, the motion maker isn't necessarily going to have to write the argument. This is just a motion to.
Are you trying to decide that right now, though?
No, you don't have to decide that before the.
So then I'll move.
Resolution would designate, right, Dave? The resolution designates who you are choosing to
There,
write.
so I think we need to choose someone.
Well, I thought I heard that if we don't choose anybody, the public can have it.
If you don't choose anybody, then the next priority
Right.
is a member of the public. If you do choose someone, you do need to specifically authorize that person to do it. Otherwise, what I have seen on other situations in other cities is if the council doesn't authorize, then a council member acts as a citizen and submits something that may be in opposition to what the approved council member said. So you need to be very specific about who is authorized to speak on behalf of the city council in submitting that, because it will have priority over any citizen's submission of an argument.
So we may not like what Ryan says.
That's possible.
But if we move that way, then I could bring that back for.
You'll
Approval.
have time, but it's going to be very compressed time.
Right. Okay.
So if we don't make this resolution.
Can we authorize more than one?
You can authorize member or members of the legislative body. So yes,
So we can move that we do this and authorize 2 council members.
that's correct.
Okay.
If we don't authorize the resolution, arguments can be made on the ballot without our approval?
That's correct.
So we don't have to approve this?
Right.
All right.
But then we also lose an element of control when we're trying to lay out why it's important that we do tax all cannabis products.
So I'll move that we adopt the resolution and designate Karen and I as the authorized representatives.
Do you agree to that?
I'll second that, and I realize that we have to do both sides. We can't just
Right.
represent one side of this.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That's passed with a 4-0-1. Next item on the agenda. Is council member reports. This is because I didn't do it last meeting.
I knew there had to be a reason for this.
He's got a captive audience.
Oh, yeah.
That's it regarding marijuana.
Let's dress it up and call it cannabis, okay?
Oh, sure,
Let's
okay.
call it cannabis.
I'm sorry. As the SBCAG APCD representative, SBCAG last meeting had a workshop. And the workshop was about the effects of SB1 being passed by and signed by the governor, and of the impacts it's going to have on the Highway 101 project. And it was a pretty thorough presentation that really stressed the need for SB1 and for the funds from SB1 for the good of the county and for the good of the roads in the county. And if you'd like to have this presentation, it can be made. They'll make the presentation or give you the PowerPoint for it. The regular meeting, under the consent calendar, voted to fund $18.5 million in local transportation funds. Those are the monies that go to buses and other local transportation, with about $100,000 or so going to streets and roads and planning. The money that goes to streets and roads after the money that the money that can go to streets and roads is available after all needs are met for transportation, public transportation. Then there was also a discussion or motions to extend and authorize amendments to various contracts for the Highway 101 construction project. And then there was a measure to the South Coast Bicycle and Pedestrian Safe Routes to School program, and between the City of Carpinteria and the City of Goleta for the timely use of funds, and also City of Santa Barbara. We also recognized Helene Schneider, mayor of Santa Barbara, her contribution to SBCAG during her tenure. And then there was a Transit Intercity Rail Capital Programs Grants Award, which was a significant amount of money to fund the rail transit between Los Angeles, in essence, and Goleta for SBCAG and for LOSAN. And the LOSAN is a joint powers authority that manages the Pacific Surfliner Intercity Rail Service. And then there was an amendment to the Fast Forward Amendment, which is more funding for the 101 Highway project. That is that for SBCAG. If you'd like more detail, contact me. APCD, Air Pollution Control District. Adopted the budget. We had a hearing board, the APCD has a hearing board that hears rebuttals to complaints and rule violations. And there's a committee of, I think it was 3 or 5 experts in air pollution that adjudicate that, and we had to appoint one that. Then there's the state-funded wood smoke reduction program. They want you to not burn logs in your fireplaces for heating or otherwise. And if you want to burn wood, you can replace those burners, those stoves and ovens and fireplace things for heating, and they'll give you money. $1,000 to pay for replacement of some of them, and $5,000 for disadvantaged people.
If you want to burn wood?
If you want to burn wood for heat, yeah. Yes, if you have a fireplace right now and you're burning wood for heat, and it's not an efficient unit, you have to they want you to replace it, and they'll contribute funds to allow you to replace it.
With a stove wood burning?
Yeah,
But in a high efficiency?
yes, more high efficiency.
Okay. No, I thought the move was just to get it away from wood fuel.
And then there's a voluntary NOx reduction remediation measure funding. There's all this money coming in. But the items that really stoked a lot of interest for me was the vessel speed reduction incentive program, which is you know that the highest part of pollution in the county comes from the steamships, the ships that run in the channel. What we can do within the county doesn't have as much of an impact as what the shipping can do out in the channels. And so the APCDs of San Francisco and Ventura, Santa Barbara, and Los Angeles are contributing money to shipping lines as incentives to reduce the speeds through the channel. They're looking to reduce it to 10 knots. And when they do that, they give them it's a mere pittance for the exact amount of oil that they'd be burning, but it's an incentive, and the incentive has worked. It has reduced pollution, and it also has reduced whale kills. That's the main effort. By slowing the ships, they're killing less whales. And then there was some district grants for community air protection that they discussed. So, and if you'd like more information, see me later. Is there any other committee reports anybody would like to make? Seeing none, we'll go to closed session. Would you please read that?
Closed session, Government Code Section 54957.6, conference with labor negotiators, agency representative, Dave Fleischman, city attorney, unrepresented employees.